the first Afrikaners granted refugee status due to arrive in the U.S. The U.S. government has officially granted 54 South Africans, white descendants of mainly Dutch colonizers, refugee status, and they are expected to land in the U.S. on Monday, May 12th. They are the first group of Afrikaners to be accepted by the U.S. after President Trump signed an executive order in February offering them possible resettlement. The Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall take appropriate steps consistent with the law to prioritize humanitarian relief, including admission and resettlement through the United States Refugee Admissions Program for Afrikaners in South Africa who are victims of unjust racial discrimination. They're going to arrive at Dulles on Monday. And then there looks like states that have agreed to take in the South Africans are Alabama, California, Idaho, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, New York, Nevada, North Carolina, and Iowa, one source said. So maybe I'm stupid and maybe I'm slow, but can anybody please explain to me why we are taking in refugees who are suffering from racial discrimination into this country when this is happening? Army veteran and legal resident Marlon Paris is jailed in Arizona after an ICE ambush despite letters shielding him from deportation. Black veteran. 19-year-old Shimena Cristobal, a 19-year-old who was brought to America at age 4, got pulled over for not using a turn signal. She was shackled and is now in ICE custody for a month. A traffic violation, and she is now in ICE. She doesn't look very white.
They only want white people here. Because when we think about refugees who need immediate resettlement, expedited screenings, we usually think about people who are fleeing extreme violence, persecution, famine, war in places like South Sudan, Myanmar, the Congo, not white Afrikaners. See that chartered plane the Trump administration is sending? It's not going to collect refugees that have been sitting in resettlement camps for years, fully vetted, waiting to come to the United States to escape violence. No, it's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream. See, while the rest of the world after World War II saw that maybe racial discrimination not such a hot idea and favored more policies of integration and away from colonization, Afrikaners doubled down on that shit and instituted apartheid. Although it ended over 30 years ago, the social and economic legacies of apartheid continue today. South Africa is the most unequal country in the entire world, according to the World Bank, with white South Africans earning over 12 times what black South Africans do. But don't worry, we're going to make sure that the white Afrikaners who instituted generations of discrimination and segregation against black people get everything they need to get started here in the United States in their new life.
Make this make sense. Trump wants to get rid of all the black and brown immigrants in this country, but yet he wants to import white refugees from South Africa. Make it make sense.
Yesterday, why Asian and Mexican immigrants moments away from being deported to Libya never left the U.S. Immigrants were woken up at 2:30 a.m. and boarded on a bus to wait for hours inside a military plane in Texas. They were sent back to solitary confinement. Yeah, these immigrants included people from the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, and Mexico. They would later learn their attorneys filed an emergency motion after reports that the Trump administration had planned to send them to Libya, a country they have never heard of, been to, been a part of, anything. And then we get the Amerikaners. This is a site. Amerikaners.com is a fast path for whites in South Africa to become refugees who can then become citizens. What color is their skin? So I went over to their Twitter page and I just started going through it, and it is as bad as you think it would be. Right here on March 2nd, there's a tiny microcosm of this happening in South Africa, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. The rise of the Anglo-Saxon on the African continent made possible by Trump is palpable. The white race is waking up from a deep slumber. And it comments like this: no, we are actually all Afrikaners now. Fact is, we are all just European mongrels in 2025 having interbred for generations. Also, President Trump could hardly call us whites in the executive order because the media backlash would have been extreme. All that said, there's the OG Americaners that know full well we've done what is necessary to leave this shit and help our fellow men and their families from safety. We're the quiet, powerful resistance made possible by our beloved President Trump. And resettlement in America made easy. Join our mailing list. Your heritage. I am an Afrikaner of Dutch, German, Germanic, French descent. I am English of British descent, or I am other. Which category do you think they're going to pick up on first? If you cannot see what is happening, let me open your eyes, okay? President Trump's people will take the next election with ease. For the one after that, all the Americaners will be on board as citizens to make it a trifecta.
So you know how Trump decided that the United States would no longer accept refugees from anywhere moving forward with an executive order that he had signed on day one in office. Well, that executive order was ruled unconstitutional, but Trump said, oh, that's not a problem. Actually, we'll just be more specific. And he said, okay, the United States is no longer accepting refugees from anywhere except for white South Africans. So now, as confirmed by a local organization that places refugees here in my city, just had a training with them, had a conversation with them about this, confirmed all of their incoming refugees that were placed with them by the UN, they were taken off the list. They had their tickets ready. They had everything all ready. And after this executive order, they pulled it. They said, nope, you can't do it anymore. And now, confirmed by the local organizations here, that we started getting lists again. People to be placed with refugee organizations. These organizations are now getting lists of only white South Africans. Specifically, white South Africans, and they call it the South African minority, who are fleeing South Africa because of the consequences of their ties to the apartheid regime. In order to prove that they are unsafe and need to come to the United States as a refugee, they have to be able to prove their connection to the apartheid state of South Africa. So no, we're no longer accepting Sudanese, Congolese. No. Only white South Africans. And I'm sure that they'll start adding more to the list. I know that they've thrown around, and this is real. It's not confirmed yet, but I know that it has been suggested that we accept German refugees because they feel unsafe due to the increase of immigration in Germany. So no. They said not the Congolese, not the Sudanese, no Syrians, no. Only white South Africans.